Ever feel like life is moving too fast? Like you're constantly juggling a dozen things at once, barely keeping up? The emails pile up, deadlines loom, and somehow, even the smallest inconveniences like traffic or a spilled coffee can send your stress levels through the roof. It's exhausting, isn't it? But here's the thing, you're not alone in this, and more importantly, you're not powerless. Thousands of years ago, one of history's greatest minds, Marcus Aurelius, faced his own version of chaos, leading an empire, enduring personal loss, navigating betrayal, and yet he wrote these words: "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That's the essence of Stoicism, a philosophy that doesn't just survive the modern world, but thrives in it. Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending life is perfect. It's about training your mind to meet challenges with clarity, resilience, and even a sense of calm. Think of it like mental armor, light enough to wear every day, strong enough to protect you when life gets tough. And the best part, you don't have to quit your job, move to a mountain, or overhaul your life to start seeing the benefits. The tools Stoicism offers are practical, immediate, and designed to work within the rhythm of your everyday routine. Whether it's handling criticism at work, bouncing back from a setback, or simply finding peace in a hectic world, these principles are as relevant now as they were in ancient Rome. So what if you could approach every day with unshakable focus, no matter what comes your way? What if stress didn't derail you, but instead became fuel for growth? That's what we're diving into today. This isn't just about theory, it's about action. Over the next 28 ways, you'll discover how to build an iron mind, step by step, without upending your life. From small daily habits to mindset shifts that change everything, each of these practices is a thread in the fabric of true mental toughness, ready to transform the way you see challenges. Let's begin. The first light of dawn is your secret weapon. Before the world demands your attention, before the notifications start flooding in, there's a quiet space where you can set the tone for the entire day. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of obstacles. It's not about dwelling on worst-case scenarios, but about mentally rehearsing the challenges you might face so they don't catch you off guard. Seneca put it perfectly: begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life. That's the power of morning reflection. You're not just waking up, you're stepping into the arena of your life with eyes wide open. Here's how to make it real. Take 5 minutes, just 5, before you check your phone or dive into the day's chaos. Grab a notebook and ask yourself 2 simple questions. What could go wrong today? And how will I respond if it does? Maybe your meeting runs late or your train gets delayed. Maybe someone criticizes your work. Whatever it is, visualize yourself handling it with calm and clarity. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation. You're building mental reflexes, so when life throws a curveball, you're not reacting, you're responding. And here's the twist: end your reflection by naming one thing you're grateful for. Gratitude isn't just a feel-good practice, it's armor against resentment and frustration. When you anchor your morning in both readiness and appreciation, you're not just surviving the day, you're shaping it. Try this for a week and watch how your mindset shifts. The chaos won't disappear, but your ability to move through it, that's where the iron mind begins. Imagine standing at the edge of a cliff, your stomach dropping as you peer into the unknown below. Now imagine doing that every morning on purpose. That's negative visualization in action, and no, it's not about torturing yourself with fear. It's about staring into the abyss until the abyss stops staring back. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the deliberate practice of envisioning what could go wrong, not to dwell in dread but to disarm it. Epictetus, the philosopher born a slave, put it bluntly: what upsets people is not things themselves but their judgments about these things. In other words, the monster under your bed shrinks the moment you turn on the light. Let's break this down with something real. Say you've got a high-stakes meeting today. Your stomach's in knots, your palms are sweaty, classic fear of the unknown. Now apply negative visualization. Picture the worst. Your proposal gets rejected. Someone interrupts you mid-presentation. The Wi-Fi crashes. Then ask yourself, could I survive this? The answer is almost always yes. Suddenly, the disaster becomes a series of solvable problems. That's the magic here. You're not avoiding fear. You're rewiring your brain to see obstacles as familiar terrain. But here's where most people miss the mark. Negative visualization isn't just about imagining the storm. It's about building the boat. After you've envisioned the worst, focus relentlessly on what's within your control. Epictetus's famous dichotomy, some things are up to us, some aren't, becomes your compass. In that meeting scenario, you can't control your boss's mood or a sudden fire drill. But you can rehearse your talking points, prepare backup slides, or even pack a USB drive. That shift from "what if this happens" to "here's how I'll handle it" is where fear transforms into fuel. Try this tonight. As you're winding down, pick one challenge looming tomorrow. Close your eyes and walk through the worst-case scenario step by step. Then jot down 3 actions you'd take to navigate it. You'll sleep lighter, wake clearer, and step into your day not with blind optimism but with quiet confidence. Because the iron mind isn't fearless, it's fear-proof. Comfort is the enemy of growth. That might sound harsh, but think about it. When was the last time you truly leveled up as a person while nestled in your cozy routine? The Stoics knew this better than anyone. Musonius Rufus, one of the lesser-known but most practical Stoic teachers, put it plainly: how can anyone become brave if he only prospers in good fortune? He didn't just preach this, he lived it. Exiled to a barren island, stripped of comforts, he didn't crumble. Instead, he turned hardship into his classroom, proving that voluntary discomfort isn't just about toughness, it's about freedom. Freedom from fear, from dependency, from the fragile illusion that life owes you ease. So how do we apply this today? You don't need to exile yourself to a desert island. Start small, but start deliberately. Take cold showers, skip that afternoon snack when the craving hits, walk instead of driving for short trips. These aren't punishments, they're rehearsals. Every time you choose discomfort over convenience, you're training your mind to handle bigger challenges with the same calm resolve. It's like lifting weights for your willpower. The discomfort you embrace voluntarily today becomes the resilience you rely on tomorrow when life forces hardship upon you. Here's the key: make it intentional. Don't just suffer through a cold shower while grumbling about it. Lean into the sensation. Notice your instinct to retreat and then stay anyway. That moment where you override your own resistance is where the iron mind is forged. Musonius Rufus called these little tests of the soul. They prove to you more than anyone else that you're capable of far more than you think. Your challenge. Pick one comfort this week, just one, and disrupt it. Maybe it's that extra hour of scrolling before bed, or the sugary coffee you default to every afternoon. Replace it with something harder but healthier. And here's the twist: pay attention not just to what you're giving up, but to what you're gaining: clarity. Discipline, the quiet pride of knowing you're no longer a slave to habit, because that's the real goal, not to punish yourself, but to prove to yourself that you're in control. The iron mind isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in these daily, deliberate acts of defiance against complacency. That moment when someone cuts you off in traffic, when your hands clench the wheel, your pulse spikes, and the urge to honk or shout rises like a wave. We've all been there, but here's the truth. Between that trigger and your reaction, there's a tiny, powerful space. Marcus Aurelius called it the gap, and mastering it is the difference between being ruled by impulses and ruling over them. He wrote, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength. That gap is where the iron mind is forged. Think of it like a muscle reflex. When a doctor taps your knee, your leg jerks automatically, but your mind doesn't have to work that way. The Stoic gap is about inserting a pause, just 3 seconds, between what happens and how you respond. In traffic, that might mean noticing the heat in your chest, taking a breath, and choosing not to escalate. Those 3 seconds are where you reclaim control. Marcus didn't just preach this, he practiced it daily, ruling an empire while enduring betrayals, wars, and personal loss. If he could find that pause in chaos, so can you. Here's how to make it real today. Pick one common trigger. Maybe it's a slow-moving line at the grocery store, a coworker's careless comment, or yet another pointless email. When it happens, hit mental pause, count silently, 1, 2, 3. In that space, ask, does reacting serve me? Most of the time, you'll find the answer is no. The jerk in traffic won't learn a lesson from your honking. The rude comment gains power if you let it rattle you. But in that gap, you're no longer on autopilot. You're the one calling the shots. The magic isn't in never feeling frustration. It's in refusing to let frustration dictate your actions. Start small. Today, practice that 3-second pause just once. Notice how it feels to respond instead of react. That's the birth of real strength, because the iron mind isn't about never being shaken. It's about choosing, moment by moment, not to stay shaken. There's a simple question that can cut through the noise of any stressful day. Is this within my control? Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who transformed his enslavement into a masterclass on inner freedom, built his entire philosophy around this razor-sharp distinction. He called it the Dichotomy of Control, the idea that some things are up to us and some simply aren't. Your opinions, your efforts, your choices, those belong to you. The weather, traffic, other people's actions, not so much. The irony is, we spend most of our energy wrestling with the second category, draining ourselves fighting battles we were never meant to win. Take a work deadline as an example. You can control how early you start the project, the quality of your research, even how you communicate with your team. But you can't control a last-minute change in company priorities, a client's sudden indecision, or your laptop crashing an hour before submission. The moment you fixate on those external factors, ranting about unfairness, obsessing over hypothetical delays, you're pouring fuel into a fire that will never warm you. Epictetus's remedy: focus relentlessly on your sphere of control. Channel that same energy into what you can influence, breaking the project into smaller tasks, setting earlier internal deadlines, or even having backup tech ready. The tighter your focus on actionable steps, the less power the uncontrollable has to derail you. Now think back to this past week. What drained your energy? Maybe it was a friend canceling plans last minute, a news headline that left you furious, or waiting endlessly for a reply that never came. Now ask, was this within my control? If the answer's no, you've just identified where your power leaked. The Stoics weren't suggesting we ignore external events. They urged us to see them clearly, like a captain spotting a storm on the horizon. You can't stop the storm, but you can adjust your sails. Here's the practice that changes everything. Keep a running list for a day, dividing every frustration into 2 columns, controllable and uncontrollable. You'll start noticing a pattern and, better yet, a shift. The iron mind isn't distracted by what it can't change. It's too busy acting on what it can. Because when you stop fighting the wind, you learn to ride it. Marcus Aurelius never intended his private journal to become one of history's most famous books. He scribbled meditations by candlelight, not for an audience but for himself, a raw, unfiltered conversation with his own mind. That's the heart of Stoic journaling. It's not about crafting pretty prose or performative self-help. It's surgery for the soul, a way to dissect your day with brutal honesty and emerge clearer, stronger. Seneca put it this way: "When the light has been removed and my wife has fallen silent, I examine my entire day and go back over what I've done and said." No filters, no excuses, just you, the page, and the truth. Here's how to make this ancient practice work for you tonight. Set aside 10 minutes, no more, before bed. Grab any notebook, even your phone's notes app, and answer 3 questions. What went well today? What could have gone better? What's one small step I'll take tomorrow to improve? That's it. No elaborate prompts, no pressure to write an essay. Marcus's own entries were often fragmented, sometimes just a single line like, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant." His goal wasn't poetic perfection, it was progress. Let's break down why this works. The first question: what went well trains your mind to spot victories, however tiny. Maybe you paused before snapping at a coworker, or finally tackled that email you'd been avoiding. Celebrating these wins rewires your brain to notice strength, not just struggle. The second question, what could have gone better, isn't about self-criticism. It's forensic. Maybe you wasted an hour scrolling when you promised you wouldn't, or let a minor comment ruin your mood. The key is to analyze without judgment, like a scientist studying data. And the third question, what's one small step, turns reflection into action. Instead of vowing to be more productive, a vague recipe for failure, you might write, "I'll put my phone in another room during dinner." Concrete, doable. Seneca's nightly ritual included a fascinating twist. He'd ask himself which of his flaws he'd cured that day, which he'd resisted, and which still dogged him. That's the Stoic difference. They didn't just track events, they tracked character. Your journal isn't a diary of what happened, it's a mirror of who you're becoming. Try this for a week and you'll start noticing patterns. Maybe impatience flares every time you're hungry, or you're quick to blame others when plans go sideways. That awareness, that's the iron mind taking shape. For those who crave structure, here's a minimalist template stolen straight from the Stoics. 1. Morning intention. One sentence on how you'll show up today, e.g., "I'll listen more than I speak." 2. Evening audit. The 3 questions above. 3. One quote. Copy a line from Marcus, Seneca, or Epictetus that resonates. Let it simmer overnight. The magic isn't in the words you write, it's in the space between them. That moment when you catch yourself making excuses, or when you realize you've grown just enough to laugh at yesterday's frustration. As Marcus wrote, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Night by night, page by page, you're not just recording your life, you're reclaiming it. What if your greatest setbacks were secretly your most valuable gifts? That's the radical idea behind Amor, Fati, Latin for love of fate. It's a concept Nietzsche borrowed from the Stoics, who believed that every obstacle, every twist of fortune, wasn't just something to endure but something to embrace. Marcus Aurelius put it best: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Think about that for a moment. The very thing blocking your path isn't a detour, it's the path itself. Consider the story of Sarah, a marketing executive who lost her job during a company downsizing. At first, it felt like a disaster, mortgage payments looming, her identity tied to that title. But forced stillness gave her clarity. She'd always dreamed of starting her own consultancy, and now, with no safety net, she finally took the leap. 2 years later, she's working half the hours for double the income, handpicking clients who align with her values. The layoff wasn't the end of her career, it was the catalyst for one she actually wanted. That's Amor Fati in action, not just accepting fate, but loving it for the hidden doors it opens. Here's the Stoic twist: this isn't about toxic positivity. You're not pretending the setback doesn't hurt, you're choosing to see it as raw material for growth. Marcus Aurelius faced constant betrayals, illness, and war during his reign. Yet he wrote, "The blazing fire makes flames and brightness out of everything thrown into it." Your job isn't to control what life throws at you, it's to become the kind of fire that transforms it. Your turn. Pick one recent setback, a rejection, a failed project, even a missed opportunity. Now grab a pen and answer 2 questions. What did this experience teach me that success couldn't? And how might this obstacle actually be redirecting me somewhere better? Maybe that lost client forced you to refine your pitch. Maybe the broken routine revealed a habit you needed to quit. The iron mind doesn't waste energy cursing the storm. It learns to sail in new directions. Because fate isn't something that happens to you, it's something you collaborate with. Picture this: you're standing on the edge of a skyscraper, looking down at the streets below. The cars are like toys, the people just specks moving in slow motion. From this height, the argument you had this morning, the spilled coffee, the looming deadline, none of it seems to matter. That's the essence of the Stoic exercise called the view from above, and it's one of the most powerful tools for putting life's daily dramas into perspective. Seneca captured it perfectly when he wrote, "The universe is a single life, embracing all things in a single consciousness. How small a part of it is the span we each call our own." This isn't about dismissing your problems as meaningless. It's about zooming out far enough to see them in their true proportion. Think of it like switching from a microscope to a telescope. Under the microscope, a grain of sand looks like a boulder, but through the telescope, that same grain is just one speck on an endless beach. The Stoics use this mental shift to dissolve anxiety, reminding themselves that most of what we stress over won't even register in a month, let alone a century. Here's how to make it practical. Next time you're caught in a spiral of worry, maybe it's a tense email thread or a family disagreement, pause for 60 seconds. Close your eyes if you can, and imagine floating upward until you're looking down at your neighborhood, then your city, then the continent. Keep going until you see the Earth as a pale blue dot in space. Suddenly, that heated argument over who forgot to take out the trash feels smaller. Not unimportant, but contained. This exercise isn't about avoiding your responsibilities. It's about tackling them with calm clarity instead of frantic emotion. For a modern twist, try pairing this with actual footage. Pull up a video of Earth taken from the International Space Station. Watch the sun rise over the curve of the planet, the thunderstorms flickering like distant fireflies. It's hard to stay consumed by petty grievances when faced with that kind of grandeur. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, writing, "Think of the substance of the whole, of how small your share, of how brief your slice of time." He wasn't diminishing his role as emperor. He was ensuring he ruled with wisdom instead of ego. Your challenge: use the view from above the next time stress starts to narrow your vision. Breathe, zoom out. Remember, you're not just living your life. You're a tiny, vital part of something incomprehensibly vast. And in that vastness, most of what we fear is smaller than we think. The iron mind isn't hardened against feeling. It's freed by perspective. Death is the ultimate deadline, and the Stoics knew this better than anyone. They didn't shy away from mortality. They kept it front and center, using it as a whetstone to sharpen their focus on what truly mattered. Seneca, who faced his own death with unsettling calm when ordered to commit suicide by Nero, left us this piercing truth. It is not that we have so little time, but that we waste so much of it. Life is long enough if you know how to use it. That's the heart of Memento Mori, not a morbid fixation on endings, but a liberation from trivial distractions. Imagine waking up every morning to a simple wallpaper on your phone, a skull, not as a Gothic decoration, but as a deliberate nudge. Before scrolling through emails or social media, you're confronted with one unavoidable question. What would I do today if it were my last? Suddenly, that pointless meeting, the petty grudge you've been nursing, the procrastinated dream, all of it gets filtered through a new lens. The Roman general Lucius Sulla kept a silver skull on his desk as a reminder, not to depress himself, but to deprioritize the noise. Here's the paradox: confronting death doesn't diminish life, it intensifies it. Think of Steve Jobs' famous Stanford commencement speech, where he said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life." That's Memento Mori in modern dress. The deadlines you fear, the risks you avoid, the conversations you postpone, they all shrink or expand under the light of your limited time. But this isn't about grand gestures, it's about the micro choices. The Stoics didn't wait for deathbeds to live deliberately. They practiced daily. Try this. Tonight, as you brush your teeth, ask yourself, did I spend today or did I invest it? Not every moment needs to be profound, but every moment can be purposeful. The argument you didn't escalate, the chapter you finally wrote, the sunset you paused to notice, those are the threads of a life woven with intention. The skull on your phone isn't there to scare you, it's there to free you, because when you stop pretending time is infinite, you start using it like the currency it is. The iron mind doesn't fear the hourglass, it masters the sand. Your breath is the most overlooked tool you already possess, an invisible anchor to the present moment, always available, always free. 2,000 years ago, Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who turned physical suffering into mental mastery, wrote, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." But he might as well have added, "and 1 breath to remind us where we are." The Stoics didn't have modern neuroscience, yet they intuitively grasped what science now confirms. Controlled breathing isn't just calming. It's a direct line to reclaiming your focus, your calm, even your courage. Consider the Roman battlefield. Before charging into combat, soldiers weren't chanting motivational slogans. They were practicing rhythmic breathing. Same for gladiators in the tunnels beneath the Colosseum. Why? Because when your heart races and your vision tunnels, breath is the first thing you lose and the first thing you must recover. Fast forward to today, you're not facing literal swords, but a flooded inbox, a toddler's tantrum, or a looming presentation can trigger the same primal stress response. That's where the 4-7-8 method becomes your Stoic shield. Here's how it works step by step. Inhale deeply through your nose for a count of 4, filling your lungs completely. Hold that breath for 7 counts. This is where the magic happens, as oxygen floods your bloodstream and your nervous system starts to reset. Then, exhale slowly through your mouth for 8 counts, releasing tension like a bowstring after the arrow's flown. Repeat this cycle just 3 times and you'll feel the shift. Your shoulders drop, your thoughts clarify, and the chaos around you loses its edge. Epictetus called this returning to the harbor of the present. You're not ignoring the storm, you're steadying the ship. Modern studies at Harvard and Stanford back this up, showing that paced breathing reduces cortisol spikes by up to 30% and boosts decision-making accuracy under pressure. The Stoics didn't need labs to prove it, they lived it. When Seneca faced exile, Marcus endured betrayal, or Epictetus rose from slavery, their first defense wasn't logic or willpower alone. It was the silent, steady rhythm of breath. Now, let's make this tangible. Your challenge: before every meal today, pause for 60 seconds and practice 4-7-8 breathing. Not while multitasking, not half-heartedly, but with full attention, as if your next breath were the only thing that existed. Why before meals? Because hunger is a primal trigger, often hijacking our patience and judgment. By anchoring yourself first, you'll eat slower, choose wiser, and maybe even notice the absurdity of stressing over a cold pizza or a missed email while nourishing a body that survived every bad day you've ever had. This isn't just stress relief, it's reclaiming sovereignty over your mind. As Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his journal, the mind adapts and converts to its own purposes the obstacle to our acting. Your breath is the ultimate conversion tool. The meeting that frustrates you, breathe, then respond. The traffic jam, breathe, then reframe. The iron mind isn't built on grand gestures, but on these microscopic moments of return again and again, to the one thing no one can take from you, the present. Complaining is like mental junk food. It satisfies an immediate craving but weakens you over time. Marcus Aurelius saw this clearly. In Meditations, he wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind." Your soul takes on the color of your thoughts. Gossip, whining, constant criticism, these aren't just bad habits. They're leaks in your mental resilience, draining your focus and energy drop by drop. The Stoics didn't just avoid complaints, they treated them as poison. Because every time you vocalize frustration about traffic, co-workers, or the weather, you're not venting steam, you're reinforcing helplessness. Let's dissect why this matters. Neuroscience shows that repetitive negative speech strengthens neural pathways associated with victimhood. In other words, the more you complain, the easier it becomes to default to that mindset. Ancient Rome had no brain scans, but the Stoics intuited this truth. Epictetus, who endured slavery before becoming a philosopher, warned his students, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." He knew that words aren't just expressions, they're rehearsals. When you gripe about your boss, you're not just describing a problem, you're practicing resentment. Here's the challenge: go 24 hours without complaining. Not just aloud in your head, too. The moment you catch yourself thinking, "This coffee is too cold," or "Why does this always happen to me?" pause. Replace it with a neutral observation: "The coffee is cold. I'll heat it up," or better yet, find the hidden advantage. "Now I get to enjoy it slowly." This isn't about pretending life is perfect. It's about refusing to let imperfection dictate your state of mind. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire plagued by wars and plagues, yet his journal brims with lines like, "The obstacle is the way." He wasn't ignoring reality, he was transcending it. To make this tangible, try this experiment today. Grab a rubber band and wear it around your wrist. Every time you complain, even internally, snap it lightly. The sting isn't punishment, it's a wake-up call. By day's end, you'll notice two things. First, how often you default to negativity without realizing it. Second, how much lighter you feel when you stop feeding those mental weeds. Now, reflect. What's your most frequent complaint? Is it about time, other people's incompetence, or life's unfairness? Trace it back. Often, the thing we complain about most is the thing we secretly feel powerless to change. But here's the twist. Deleting complaints isn't about silence, it's about reclaiming agency. The iron mind doesn't ignore problems. It solves them or accepts them, but it never whines about them, because as Marcus scribbled in the dead of night, "You could be good today." But instead you choose tomorrow. The barbell is stuck on the rack, your muscles scream in protest, and that voice in your head whispers, maybe next time. Most of us see that moment as failure, but what if it's actually the starting line? That's the core of the obstacle is the way. Ryan Holiday's modern take on Stoicism's most battle-tested principle. The Stoics didn't just endure hardships, they reverse-engineered them, transforming barriers into blueprints. As Epictetus put it, every difficulty in life presents us with an opportunity to turn inward and invoke our own submerged inner resources. In other words, the weight that crushes you can also forge you, if you know how to flip it. Take that fitness goal. Missing a workout isn't just a setback, it's a diagnostic tool. Maybe it reveals poor sleep habits, or that you've been pushing too hard without recovery. The obstacle, your exhaustion, is actually data pointing you towards smarter training. Holiday calls this the art of inversion. Instead of asking, how do I avoid this problem? Ask, what is this problem teaching me? When a knee injury sidelines a runner, it forces them to discover swimming or mobility work, often uncovering weaknesses they'd ignored while chasing miles. The obstacle didn't block progress, it redirected it towards something more sustainable. History's ironclad minds lived this. When a fire destroyed Thomas Edison's lab, he didn't mourn the loss. He told reporters, "Thank God all our mistakes were burned up, now we can start fresh." That's Amor Fati meets pragmatism. Your version might look smaller, a delayed flight becomes focused planning time. A criticism highlights blind spots in your project, but the mechanism is identical. Resistance isn't the enemy, it's the co-teacher. Here's your challenge, pick one current obstacle. Maybe it's a tight budget, a skeptical client, or a skill gap. Now rip a page from Marcus Aurelius's playbook and ask, how could this exact situation prepare me for something greater? A tight budget breeds creativity. A skeptical client sharpens your persuasion skills. A skill gap forces humility and learning. The iron mind doesn't dodge friction, it uses it as traction. Because the barrier isn't in your way, it is the way. Your mind is a garden, and what you allow to grow there determines the harvest. Seneca warned, "Be careful what you set your heart upon, for you will surely get it." In an age where our attention is the most valuable commodity, the Stoic practice of guarding your mental space isn't just philosophy, it's survival. Every tweet you scroll past, every outrage-fueled headline you click, every influencer's curated life you compare yourself to, these aren't neutral inputs. They're seeds taking root in your subconscious, shaping your moods, your fears, even your self-worth. Think about your last social media session. How did you feel afterward? Energized, inspired, or subtly drained, as if you'd been arguing with strangers in your living room? The ancient Stoics didn't face algorithm-driven feeds, but they understood the principle. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Today, your thoughts are often borrowed from viral negativity, gossip columns, or the endless highlight reels of others' lives. The solution isn't to swear off technology, but to curate with the precision of a museum director. Start here, pick one social platform you use daily. Open your following list and ask of each account, does this feed my mind or fracture it? That meme page flooding you with cynicism. The news account that leaves you fuming but never informed. The acquaintance whose posts always trigger envy. Prune them mercilessly. Seneca didn't just avoid toxic people. He wrote letters about physically removing himself from environments that bred resentment. Your digital environment demands the same ruthlessness. Replace the void with nourishment. Follow historians dissecting Stoic texts, scientists explaining resilience. Chefs turning simple ingredients into feasts. Your feed should be a library, not a tabloid. Marcus Aurelius had his tutor's Crotto for philosophy, Apollonius for character. You have the power to choose yours, one follow button at a time. Tonight, try this experiment. For every 10 minutes you'd normally spend scrolling, read one page from meditations or letters from a Stoic instead. Notice how your mind settles, as if stepping from a noisy street into a quiet study. The iron mind isn't built by consuming more, but by consuming better. Because what you let in doesn't just pass through you, it becomes you. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, would deliberately live like a pover for days at a time. He'd wear ragged clothes, eat stale bread, sleep on the floor, not because he had to, but because he chose to. In his letters, he explained why. Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, "Is this the condition that I feared?" This wasn't self-punishment. It was stress testing his own resilience, proving to himself that his happiness didn't hinge on silk robes or gourmet feasts. The Stoics called this voluntary discomfort, and in our age of instant gratification, it's more revolutionary than ever. Think about your last Amazon impulse buy, that gadget you barely use, the subscription you forgot to cancel, the extra coffee you didn't need but bought out of habit. Now imagine going 24 hours without spending a single dollar. No takeout, no online shopping, no convenience purchases, just you and what you already own. That's the modern version of Seneca's poverty practice, a monthly no-spend day. At first glance, it sounds trivial, but dig deeper and you'll uncover something profound. When you pause the autopilot of consumption, you start noticing the abundance you've been overlooking. That slightly worn sweater, it's still warm, the leftovers in the fridge. A feast compared to what most of history's humans ate. The library book gathering dust on your shelf, a treasure someone spent years writing. Here's the challenge that changes everything. Pick one luxury you consider essential. Your daily latte, streaming subscriptions, ride shares instead of walking, and quit it for a week. Not forever, just long enough to ask yourself, does this actually enhance my life, or have I just been conditioned to think I need it? A CEO client of mine tried this with his morning smoothie delivery. For 7 days, he blended frozen fruit himself. By day 3, he realized the ritual of making it the sound of the blender. The smell of berries brought him more joy than the impersonal courier ever had. The luxury wasn't the smoothie, it was the mindfulness he'd been outsourcing. This practice isn't about austerity for its own sake. It's about rediscovering the quiet joy of enough. The Stoics weren't anti-wealth, they were anti-dependency. Marcus Aurelius, despite his imperial palace, wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life." He knew that the more we tie our contentment to external things, the more fragile our peace becomes. Your no-spend day isn't a punishment, it's a rebellion against the lie that more always equals better. When you voluntarily step back from excess, you're not losing comforts, you're gaining something far rarer, the unshakable knowledge that you'll be okay no matter what. So this month, skip the takeout one night and raid your pantry instead. Walk past the coffee shop and brew your own. Notice how your mind fights back at first, how it whines about inconvenience. Then watch as something shifts. The meal tastes richer because you prepared it. The walk to work sharpens your senses. The iron mind isn't built by acquiring more, but by proving, again and again, that you are more than your possessions. As Seneca put it, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. The coworker clicking their pen non-stop, the construction noise outside your window. That one person in meetings who always interrupts. These daily irritations aren't just minor annoyances. They're the whetstones that sharpen your patience if you let them. Epictetus, who endured slavery before becoming one of history's most revered philosophers, offered a simple but brutal test. If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. In other words, the noise isn't the problem, your resistance to it is. Picture this: you're deep in focus at work when the colleague across from you starts humming off key. Your jaw clenches, you could snap, sigh dramatically, or shoot them a look, but what if you did nothing? Not passive-aggressive silence, but deliberate stillness. That's the heart of silent endurance, letting irritation wash over you like a wave, observing it without letting it pull you under. The Stoics didn't preach this because they were saints. They practiced it because they knew every time you suppress a knee-jerk reaction, you're strengthening a mental muscle far more powerful than anger, self-command. Here's why this works. When you react to an annoyance, you're essentially handing the reins of your mood to someone else. The pen clicker now controls your focus. The interrupter dictates your peace, but when you choose silence, you reclaim agency. Marcus Aurelius called this the quiet mind, a space where external chaos can't penetrate unless you permit it. Modern science backs this up. Studies on emotional regulation show that even a 3-second pause before reacting reduces cortisol spikes by nearly half. Try this experiment today. Next time a minor irritation arises, a loud phone conversation on your commute, a buzzing fly in your kitchen, freeze. Don't complain, don't vent later. Just watch your own reaction like a scientist observing an experiment. Notice where the heat rises in your body, the scripts your mind starts writing. Why can't they just? And then let them pass without acting. Epictetus would say you're not just enduring the noise, you're training to endure far greater storms. The irony. Most irritations vanish when left unattended. The pen clicking stops when it gets no audience. The interrupter runs out of steam without opposition. But even when they don't, you've changed. The iron mind isn't unbothered, it's undisturbed, because true patience isn't about gritting your teeth, it's about loosening your grip. Every time you refresh your social media feed, you're staring at a highlight reel, carefully curated snapshots of vacations, promotions, and picture-perfect moments. Meanwhile, you're sitting in sweatpants, wondering why your life doesn't measure up. Here's the brutal truth the Stoics grasped 2,000 years ago. Chasing external validation is like drinking salt water. The more you consume, the thirstier you become. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, scribbled this reminder in his private journal. It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. That's the paradox of reputation. We sacrifice our character, the one thing truly within our control, for the fleeting approval of others. Consider the modern obsession with personal branding. We polish LinkedIn profiles, stage Instagram photos, and rehearse elevator pitches, all to control how others perceive us. But the Stoics would ask, at what cost? Every minute spent crafting an image is a minute not spent building integrity. Epictetus, born a slave and crippled by his master's brutality, put it bluntly. If someone told you that others spoke ill of you, don't defend yourself but reply, obviously, they don't know me well, otherwise they'd have mentioned these other faults too. That's not self-deprecation, it's liberation. When you stop fearing misjudgment, you're free to focus on what actually matters, who you are when no one's watching. Let's make this painfully practical. Scroll through your last week of social media posts. How many were authentically you, and how many were performative? The latte art photo, did you post it because you genuinely admired the craftsmanship, or because you wanted to signal a certain lifestyle? The Stoics weren't against sharing, they warned against posing. Seneca wrote letters not for likes, but to distill his thoughts. Marcus kept meditations private because his philosophy wasn't a costume, it was his marrow. Now reflect, when did you last choose authenticity over applause? Maybe it was biting your tongue in a meeting instead of parroting popular opinion. Or admitting, "I don't know," rather than bluffing. These quiet acts of integrity are the bricks of an iron mind, because reputation is what others think you are. Character is what you know you are. And as Marcus reminded himself, the applause of the crowd is but the clatter of tongues. Here's your challenge today. Before speaking, posting, or even dressing, ask, am I doing this for them or for me? Not in a selfish sense, but in a sovereign one. The iron mind doesn't rebel against social norms, it transcends them. It knows that the only reputation worth having is the one you'd keep if every critic vanished tomorrow. Because when you stop performing, you start living, and that's when the real work, the work that matters, begins. Your next meal could be more than just fuel. It might be the most overlooked mindfulness practice in your day. The Stoic philosopher Musonius Rufus, known for stripping philosophy down to its practical bones, insisted that simple food nourishes the body as well as elaborate meals, and is even more conducive to health. But he wasn't just talking about what we eat, he was revealing how we eat. In ancient Rome, banquets were orgies of excess courses piled high, wine flowing endlessly, entertainment distracting from the act of nourishment itself. Sound familiar? Swap the togas for smartphones, and you've got modern life. Meals scarfed down between emails, lunches spent scrolling, dinners with one eye on the TV. The Stoics saw this coming 2 millennia ago. Their antidote, the pause before the first bite. Here's why this matters. When you eat mindlessly, you're not just missing flavors, you're training your brain to treat everything in life as background noise. That sandwich you inhaled at your desk, it's not just a meal skipped, it's a rehearsal for rushing through conversations, skimming books without absorbing them, living on autopilot. Musonius taught that how we approach a meal mirrors how we approach existence. If you seek wisdom, eat like it, he'd say. The act of slowing down to taste, to chew deliberately, to set down your fork between bites, these aren't just dining etiquette. They're resistance against the tyranny of hurry. Your challenge is deceptively simple. Eat one meal this week in total silence. No podcasts, no screens, no small talk. Just you, your food, and the rhythm of your breath. At first, it'll feel unnatural, maybe even uncomfortable. You'll notice the urge to reach for your phone to fill the quiet. That's the point. Those urges are the mental static this practice clears away. Pay attention to the crunch of vegetables, the warmth of broth, the way flavors evolve as you chew. Notice when your mind wanders to your to-do list and gently guide it back to the present bite. This isn't just eating, it's attention calisthenics. Musonius took this further, advocating for occasional fasting not as deprivation, but as a reminder that hunger is just a sensation, not an emergency. Try this twist during your silent meal. Pause halfway and set your utensils down for 60 seconds. Observe the difference between craving another bite and actually needing it. That gap between impulse and action is where the iron mind flexes its strength. Because if you can master your relationship with a plate of food, imagine what else becomes possible. The meeting you don't rush through, the conversation you don't interrupt, the life you don't sleepwalk through, all of it starts with something as simple as putting down your fork. And tasting, truly tasting, the power of now. Imagine walking into a grocery store ravenously hungry. Everything looks tempting, from the candy at checkout to the chips on sale. Now imagine walking in right after a full meal. The difference, one version of you is vulnerable to impulse, the other makes choices aligned with your values. That's the power of pre-commitment, a Stoic strategy Seneca called binding yourself to the mast long before temptation strikes. He wrote, "The man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." In other words, ethical clarity isn't forged in the heat of the moment. It's drafted in the cool light of reflection. Take gossip. You know it erodes trust and wastes time, yet when co-workers start dissecting someone's promotion over lunch, the urge to join in feels magnetic. That's why Seneca advised setting irrevocable decrees for yourself, non-negotiable boundaries decided in advance. Before stepping into the office, declare silently, "Today, I won't contribute to gossip, even if it means changing the subject or walking away." This isn't about willpower, it's about removing the choice altogether, like Odysseus tying himself to his ship's mast to resist the siren's song. The iron mind doesn't rely on momentary strength, it builds fail-safes. But pre-commitment goes beyond avoiding harm. It's about proactively choosing who you'll be. A client of mine, a financial advisor, starts each week by writing, "I will prioritize clients' long-term stability over short-term commissions." This mantra isn't lofty, it's practical. When pressured to push a high-fee product, his pre-commitment becomes a compass. Marcus Aurelius did the same, scripting morning reminders like, "I will meet today's chaos with kindness." By defining his virtue upfront, he turned philosophy into action before his feet hit the palace floor. Here's your challenge tonight. Grab a notebook and finish this sentence. "Tomorrow, I will not compromise on." Fill the blank with something concrete, not "be better," but "I won't check emails during family dinner," or "I'll speak up if someone's interrupted in meetings." Then play out the scenarios where this commitment might be tested. Visualize yourself keeping that promise. The Stoics called this premeditatio, rehearsing virtue like an actor rehearsing lines. When the moment comes, you're not deciding, you're executing, because integrity isn't about grand gestures, it's the sum of small, pre-arranged choices. The coworker who laughs at your refusal to gossip today might respect you for it tomorrow. The client you prioritize over profit might refer 10 others. The iron mind knows the best defense against temptation isn't resistance, it's preparation. Gratitude isn't just a warm feeling, it's a shield. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned personal suffering into timeless wisdom, put it bluntly. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. That's the Stoic secret. Gratitude isn't passive appreciation, it's active resistance against discontent. Think of it like this: every time you focus on what you do have, you're pulling mental resources away from what you don't. And in a world engineered to make you crave more, that's nothing short of rebellion. Take Sergeant James, a Marine veteran who lost his leg in combat. In rehab, his stoic-minded therapist gave him an unusual assignment. List 3 things you can still do today that you couldn't do yesterday. At first, it felt absurd. How could he be grateful when his life had been upended? But the answers surprised him. I could wiggle my toes on my remaining foot without pain. I could sit up without help. I could remember my nephew's birthday. None of these were grand victories, but together they became stepping stones out of despair. That's the power of micro-gratitude. It doesn't erase suffering, but it refuses to let suffering erase everything else. Here's why this works neurologically. Your brain has a built-in negativity bias. It's like Velcro for bad experiences and Teflon for good ones. Ancient Rome had no fMRI machines, but the Stoics intuited this imbalance. Their solution, a rigorous gratitude practice, not just when things go well, but especially when they don't. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling an empire at war, wrote nightly of simple gifts. I have a comfortable bed, fresh water to drink, friends who speak truth. He wasn't ignoring his burdens, he was balancing them. Your turn. Right now, wherever you are, pause and name 3 mundane blessings. The hum of a working refrigerator, the way sunlight slants through your window, that old T-shirt soft from years of wear. These aren't small things, they're the invisible infrastructure of your life. The veteran's lesson applies to all of us. Gratitude isn't about denying hardship. It's about refusing to let hardship deny you joy. Try this tonight. Before sleep, replay your day not as a highlight reel, but as a treasure hunt for overlooked gifts. The green light that caught you just in time, the stranger who held the door. The fact that you have a door, a street, a life where such moments go unnoticed. The iron mind doesn't wait for perfection to be thankful. It finds the perfection in waiting. Because as Epictetus knew, wanting what you have is the shortest path to having enough. The next time you shake someone's hand, you're not just exchanging pleasantries, you're stepping onto an ancient battlefield of composure. The Romans didn't clasp palms as a casual formality. They saw it as a micro-test of character. A weak grip signaled timidity, a crushing one aggression, but the Stoic handshake. Perfect equilibrium, firm enough to convey confidence, measured enough to show control. Seneca wrote of greeting others with steady hands and steady eyes, because how you meet the world reveals more than your words ever could. This wasn't just etiquette, it was a live drill for self-mastery. Think of the last high-pressure moment you faced a job interview, a difficult conversation, maybe even receiving bad news. Recall how your hands betrayed you, clammy palms, a tremor, fingers gripping too tight. Now imagine approaching that same situation with the unshakable poise of a Stoic. The physical act of a deliberate handshake becomes an anchor, a way to ground yourself before the storm hits. Military officers still teach this. Before addressing troops or entering negotiations, they'll subtly press a thumb to their palm to regulate breathing and steady their grip. The external becomes internal. Control the hand, and you begin to control the mind. Here's the hidden genius of this practice. In ancient Rome, greetings often preceded life or death decisions. Diplomatic deals, gladiatorial matches, even Senate votes where a single misstep could mean exile. By turning the handshake into a ritual of composure, Stoics transformed an everyday act into preparation for life's crucibles. Marcus Aurelius likely rehearsed this daily, extending his hand to ambassadors and adversaries alike, using each encounter to practice equanimity. The modern equivalent, that Zoom call where you're seething inwardly but keep your voice steady. The family dinner where you bite back a reactive comment. The Stoic handshake isn't about the other person, it's about who you choose to be in that moment. Your challenge today is disarmingly simple. At your next introduction, pay laser attention to your grip. Not just the pressure, but the tempo. Is it rushed or deliberate? The temperature. Are your palms cool or feverish? The duration. Are you pulling away too soon or holding just long enough to convey presence? This isn't about manipulation, it's about awareness, because every handshake is a mirror. A client once told me how he knew a deal was lost the moment his potential partner's hand felt like a dead fish wrapped in anxiety. The iron mind doesn't leave such impressions to chance. For an advanced test, try this Stoic drill. Next time you're stressed, heart racing, thoughts scattered, find a colleague or friend and initiate a handshake. Focus on making yours the calm center of the interaction. Feel the shift. That's the paradox at work. By steadying your body, you steady your mind. The Romans knew what science now confirms: physical actions can regulate emotional states. No wonder Epictetus taught his students to let your hands teach your heart, because sometimes the simplest rituals hold the deepest lessons. The way you greet the world shapes the way the world greets you back. That sharp pang in your chest when a colleague gets the promotion you wanted, it's not just envy, it's a signal. The Stoics had a radical approach to this feeling. They didn't suppress it or wallow in it. They reverse-engineered it. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who faced constant political scheming, wrote in his private journal, The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. But he took it further. When others excelled, he saw it as a live tutorial. Your rival's relentless work ethic, that's a masterclass in discipline. Your neighbor's thriving side hustle. A case study in resilience. Envy, when flipped, becomes curriculum. Consider the software developer who seethed every time a peer's code got praised. One day, he applied reverse gratitude instead of resenting their skill. He dissected it. What made their solutions cleaner, their comments more precise. Within months, he'd not only improved his own work but formed a mentorship with his former rival. That's the alchemy of this practice. What drains you as jealousy can fuel you as inspiration. Seneca, no stranger to professional competition, advised, "Cherish those who excel, for they show you what's possible." Here's how to make this visceral. List 3 people who trigger that hot pinch of envy. Maybe it's the friend with a seemingly perfect marriage, the influencer with flawless discipline, or the coworker who speaks up in meetings while you stay silent. Now interrogate that feeling. What exact trait am I coveting? Is it their consistency, their confidence, their ability to say no? Drill down until you hit the raw skill or quality beneath the emotion. Then steal it ethically, not their achievements but the habits that built them. The iron mind doesn't waste energy on bitterness, it reverse engineers success. That colleague who always lands clients, study their listening skills. The parent who stays patient under chaos, observe their pauses. Marcus Aurelius kept a mental roster of traits he admired in others. His rival's stamina, his wife's grace, even his enemy's tactical mind. He wrote, "When you encounter someone better than you, turn inward and ask, 'What can I borrow?' Because the truth is, envy is just unclaimed potential in disguise." The next time it flares, don't look away, lean in. That discomfort, that's the friction of growth. Right now, that argument with your coworker feels like the end of the world, but will it even register a decade from now? That's the razor-sharp question Seneca wielded like a surgeon's scalpel. Does this deserve the wrinkles it's carving into your brow? The Stoics called it the 10-year test, a mental time machine that shrinks today's emergencies into tomorrow's footnotes. Think about the last time you lost sleep over a missed deadline or a snarky email. Fast forward 10 years, will that moment be a turning point in your life story, or just a blur in the rearview mirror? The answer isn't just comforting, it's liberating. Take Sarah, a project manager who nearly quit her job after a heated clash with her boss over a delayed report. For weeks, she replayed the confrontation, drafting resignation letters in her head. Then she applied the 10-year test. Will this matter in 2034? Suddenly, the betrayal felt smaller, not insignificant but survivable. She stayed, repaired the relationship, and later realized the conflict had forced her to streamline her team's workflow. What felt like a career-ending crisis became a catalyst for growth. That's the magic of perspective. It doesn't erase pain, but it refuses to let pain erase the bigger picture. Here's how to make this real today. Grab a sticky note and rate your current stress on 2 scales. First, its intensity right now, say, an 8/10. Then its probable importance in 10 years, maybe a 2/10. The gap between those numbers is your clarity metric. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality," and modern psychology agrees. The brain treats hypothetical futures like imminent threats. By forcing yourself to project forward, you short-circuit that panic cycle, that looming presentation, the passive-aggressive text, the mistake you're obsessing over. Most won't make the cut for your future memoir, but this isn't about dismissing your feelings, it's about contextualizing them. Marcus Aurelius kept a journal not to vent, but to zoom out. Think of the whole universe, he'd write, and how small your share of it is. Try his exercise next time stress hits. Picture yourself a decade older, wiser, looking back on this moment. What advice would future you give? Maybe it's speak up or let it go, but chances are it won't be keep agonizing. The iron mind doesn't ignore storms. It learns to measure their true lifespan, because time doesn't just heal wounds, it reveals which ones were never fatal to begin with. Your daily walk could be more than just exercise. It might be the most underrated mindfulness practice in your life. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor who ruled Rome at its peak, didn't pace marble halls lost in thought. He walked with purpose, training himself to notice the fig tree's split bark, the chatter of market vendors, the weight of a pebble in his sandal. In his private writings, he called these walks his moving meditation, where he practiced a radical idea: no room for distraction in presence. No to-do lists, no imaginary arguments, just the raw, unfiltered experience of being alive. Fast forward 2,000 years, and we've turned walking into just another multitasking opportunity: podcasts blaring, screens glowing, attention scattered. The Stoic challenge: reclaim those steps as sacred ground for your senses. Here's how to start. On your next walk, engage in what psychologists call sensory anchoring. Pick 5 details to observe deliberately. The way autumn leaves crunch underfoot with a sound like crumpling parchment. The sharp tang of coffee drifting from a sidewalk cafe. The rhythmic sway of your arms, pendulum steady. The warmth of sunlight on one side of your face, cool shade on the other. The faint hum of power lines overhead, a modern substitute for the buzzing insects Marcus would have noted. This isn't just noticing, it's reclaiming. Each sensory anchor pulls you back from the vortex of rumination and plants you firmly in the now. Neuroscientists have found that this practice, called grounding, reduces anxiety by up to 30% in real time. The Stoics didn't have EEG machines, but they knew a mind tethered to the present is a mind unshaken by storms. But here's the twist: try tomorrow's walk without headphones. No podcast, no playlist, just the symphony of the world as it is. At first, it'll feel unsettling. You'll notice the itch to fill the silence, the urge to escape your own thoughts. That's the point. Seneca warned against the poverty of constant stimulation, arguing that silence isn't empty, it's the space where clarity grows. A tech CEO client of mine resisted this challenge for weeks, insisting he needed his audiobooks for productive commuting. When he finally unplugged, he noticed 2 things. First, how often his mind defaulted to replaying an old argument with his co-founder. Second, how many creative solutions emerged once he stopped drowning them out with noise. His walks became his most productive meetings with himself. For the advanced practitioner, add a layer of Stoic speed play. Alternate between brisk, purposeful strides channeling Marcus leading troops through Germania, and slow, deliberate steps like Seneca pacing his courtyard in deep reflection. Notice how each pace shifts your mindset. The brisk walk energizes focus, the slow one nurtures insight. This isn't just movement, it's embodied philosophy. The iron mind isn't built in stillness alone, it's forged in the rhythm of purposeful motion. So lace up your shoes, leave the earbuds behind, and let the world be your podcast. The crunch of gravel, the scent of rain on pavement, the dance of shadows, these are your teachers now, and they've been waiting for you to listen. Deep within you, there's a place no chaos can touch, a sanctuary of calm, even when the world outside is in turmoil. Marcus Aurelius called it his inner citadel, a mental fortress he retreated to during wars, betrayals, and plagues. He wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." But this wasn't just poetic imagery, it was a survival tool. Picture a castle with towering walls, not built of stone, but of breath and intention. Every inhale lays a brick, every exhale seals it tight. And the mortar holding it all together, your core values. Start with the breath, the simplest yet most profound tool for constructing this fortress. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine your mind as a vast, open plain. With each slow inhale, visualize a wall rising from the earth, sturdy and unshakable. As you exhale, feel the space inside those walls grow still, untouched by the storms outside. Ancient Stoics used this technique before battles or speeches, not to escape reality, but to master it. Modern neuroscience backs this up. Rhythmic breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, dialing down stress hormones and sharpening focus. Your breath isn't just keeping you alive, it's building your stronghold. Now, the cornerstone question: what 3 values fortify your mind? For Marcus, it was wisdom, justice, and courage. But yours might be different. A teacher's citadel could be grounded in patience, curiosity, and compassion. A firefighter's in duty, resilience, and calm. List yours now, not abstract ideals, but principles you defend at all costs. When a crisis hits, these become your compass. Imagine a colleague takes credit for your work. Instead of reacting in anger, you retreat to your citadel and ask, what does integrity demand here? The walls don't eliminate the challenge, but they give you space to choose your response. Here's how to make this tangible today. Find a quiet moment, maybe early morning or late at night, and sketch your citadel. Not an artist, no problem. Draw 3 concentric circles. The outer ring represents distractions, noise, others' opinions, setbacks. The middle ring is your breath, the barrier that filters out what doesn't serve you. The innermost circle holds your 3 values written boldly. Keep this sketch where you'll see it daily, a bathroom mirror, your phone's lock screen. Each time chaos knocks, you'll remember, you're not just reacting in the moment, you're returning to a fortress you've built brick by brick. The iron mind isn't about ignoring the world, it's about creating an inner space where the world doesn't ignore you. Because when you know where your sanctuary lies, no storm can truly breach you. You become like Marcus on the battlefield, surrounded by chaos, yet unshaken at the center. Laughter might seem like an odd weapon against life's frustrations, but the Stoics wielded it with precision. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned personal suffering into wisdom, once told his students, when you're faced with any challenge, remember, the gods are giving you an opportunity to practice laughter. Not denial, not despair, but a defiant chuckle at the absurdity of it all. Picture this: you're rushing to an important meeting, coffee in hand, when your elbow catches the edge of a door. The cup flips, dark liquid arcs through the air, and suddenly your crisp white shirt looks like a Rorschach test of bad luck. The old you might curse, panic, or spiral into a rant about the universe conspiring against you. The Stoic version: you pause, take in the ridiculousness of the moment, and laugh. Not because the situation is funny, but because your reaction is the one thing you can control. There's neuroscience behind this ancient hack. When you laugh at adversity, you trigger a cognitive shift. Your brain stops registering the event as a threat and starts framing it as a story. That spilled coffee becomes material for a self-deprecating anecdote rather than proof of your clumsiness. Researchers at Stanford found that humor reduces the brain's stress response by nearly 40%, essentially tricking your nervous system into downgrading a crisis to a hiccup. The Stoics didn't have fMRI machines, but they knew this instinctively. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The cucumber is bitter, throw it away. There are brambles in your path." Go around, that's enough, don't add, why do these things always happen to me? The irony is the antidote, your turn. Think of one recent disaster. Maybe you tripped on a Zoom call, sent an email to the wrong person, or burned dinner to charcoal. Now replay it like a comedy sketch. The exaggerated gasp as you realize your mistake, the slow-motion horror as the smoke alarm wails, the way your dog looked at you like even he could have managed the oven better. That's the Stoic pivot, not "this ruins everything," but "this will make a great story." A client of mine, a trial lawyer, keeps a humor log of courtroom blunders. The time his PowerPoint froze on a meme, the moment he mispronounced a witness's name so badly the judge snorted. What started as cringe-worthy memories became his secret weapon for diffusing tension. But here's the nuance Stoics mastered. Laughter isn't escapism. It's recalibration. When Seneca lost his fortune and later his freedom, he wrote, "Fate gives us nothing we cannot use, not even mockery." He didn't laugh to ignore his suffering, he laughed to strip it of power. Modern psychology calls this cognitive reappraisal, but you don't need jargon to feel it work. That meeting you prepared for all week, only to have the client cancel last minute. Instead of fuming, imagine future you recounting it at a dinner party. "And then I realized I'd just been gifted 3 free hours, so I went to the movies and ate an entire tub of popcorn alone." The disaster didn't change, your grip on it did. So tonight, try this. Share your disaster with someone, not as a complaint but as a punchline. Watch their face shift from sympathy to smiles. That's the alchemy Epictetus knew. When you laugh at misfortune, you don't just survive it, you steal its teeth. The iron mind isn't humorless, it's unstoppable because it refuses to take every setback seriously. After all, what's life without a few spilled coffees to keep us humble and entertained? Your calendar isn't just a record of appointments, it's a battleground where your priorities either stand firm or get trampled by everyone else's demands. Seneca, the Stoic sage who tutored an emperor, saw time as the only currency that truly mattered. Guard it like a fortress, he warned, because once spent, it's gone forever. Yet how many of us hand over hours like loose change attending events we dread, taking on tasks that drain us, saying yes when every fiber screams no? The Stoics had a radical solution, the disciplined, deliberate no, not as a rejection but as a declaration of what you truly value. Imagine this scenario. Your coworker slides into your DMs with yet another quick favor, editing their presentation last minute. You've done it a dozen times before, always swallowing your resentment. But today you channel Seneca. Instead of sighing and agreeing, you respond, "I can't commit to this right now, but I'd be happy to review it during our next scheduled meeting." No apologies, no guilt, just a boundary, clear as glass. That's the Stoic no in action, not hostile but immovable. The coworker might blink in surprise, but something shifts in you too. For the first time, you've treated your time as non-negotiable. Here's why this practice cuts deeper than simple assertiveness. Every yes to something unimportant is a no to something vital, your health, your growth, your peace. Seneca called this the poverty of busyness, where people spend their lives making preparations for living rather than actually living. Modern research echoes this. A Yale study found that people who struggle to say no experience 40% higher stress levels and significantly lower life satisfaction. The irony, most requests we fear rejecting would be forgotten by the asker within hours. That dinner invitation you agonized over declining, the host likely filled your seat without a second thought. But the Stoic no isn't about selfishness, it's about stewardship. Consider Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire yet carved out hours daily for philosophy and family. He wrote, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary?" His no to frivolous meetings and sycophants was his yes to governing with wisdom. Your version might look smaller, skipping a gossip-filled happy hour to work on your side project, or turning down a committee role to preserve weekend rest, but the principle is identical. Every refusal is an affirmation of something greater. Your challenge this week: decline one request guilt-free, not with excuses, "I'm so busy," but with quiet conviction, "That doesn't align with my priorities right now." Pay attention to the aftermath. The sky won't fall, the earth won't crack. What you'll discover is the weightlessness of reclaimed time, the space to breathe and choose. Because the iron mind isn't just about enduring what comes, it's about deciding what deserves to come at all. As Seneca put it, life is long enough if you know how to use it. And the first step to using it well is knowing what to refuse. Picture yourself decades from now, not as the vibrant, capable version of you reading this today, but as the elder you'll one day become. The hands that once typed with ease are now fragile, the eyes that skim these words have dimmed, and the time you once took for granted has dwindled to mere grains in an hourglass. In this quiet moment, your younger self stands before you, the version of you alive right now, brimming with potential but perhaps squandering it on trivial worries, procrastinated dreams, or petty grievances. What would your wisest, most weathered self say? Marcus Aurelius confronted this daily, scribbling in Meditations. Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly, not as morbid fixation, but as fierce clarity. Consider the entrepreneur who spent her 30s chasing validation through endless deals, only to realize at 60 that she'd missed her children's first steps, school plays, and quiet bedtime stories. Now her greatest regret isn't the deals she lost, it's the presents she sacrificed, or the writer who delayed his novel for decades, waiting for the perfect time, only to face a terminal diagnosis with chapters unwritten. These aren't hypotheticals, they're the lived regrets of countless people who assumed they'd have more time. The Stoic exercise isn't about fear-mongering, it's about liberation. By fast-forwarding to your final moments, you strip away the illusions of someday and expose the raw truth of today. Here's how to make this visceral. Grab a notebook right now and title a page letter from my deathbed. Address it to your present self. No flowery prose, just blunt wisdom. What would future you plead with you to stop tolerating? The toxic relationship you rationalize staying in, the creative project you keep postponing, the grudges you nurse like cherished heirlooms. Then flip the page and ask, what would future you beg you to start? Maybe it's finally booking that solo trip, having the courage to change careers, or simply putting the phone down to really listen when your loved ones speak. This isn't fantasy, it's rehearsal. Neurologists call this episodic future thinking, a proven tool for breaking procrastination cycles. The Stoics called it waking up. Marcus Aurelius took this further with a nightly ritual. Before sleep, he'd review his day as if it were his last, asking, did I live today in a way I'd defend on my deathbed? Not perfectly, but purposefully. Try this tonight. Replay your day's key moments like scenes in a film. That rushed breakfast, would dying you wish you'd savored the coffee instead of chugging it? The argument over dishes, was it worth the energy you poured into it? The hour lost to social media, could it have been spent reading to your child or calling an old friend? The goal isn't guilt but course correction. Your final challenge is the most confronting. At random moments today, pause and whisper, will future me thank me for this? Not as a mantra, but as a gut check. When you're about to skip the gym, when you're biting back truth to keep the peace, when you're numbing stress with mindless scrolling, that question slices through excuses like a scalpel. The iron mind isn't afraid of endings. It uses them as a compass, because the surest way to live without regrets is to live as if you're already reviewing your life from its final page and writing each new line accordingly. The comment thread explodes. Someone's misrepresented your point. The replies are piling up, and your fingers hover over the keyboard, itching to correct them. But here's the Stoic counterintuition. Sometimes the strongest rebuttal is no rebuttal at all. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned persecution into power, laid down the rule. If someone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, don't make excuses but answer, "He was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone." That's not defeatism, it's tactical superiority. When you refuse to engage, you reveal something startling. Their words only have the power you grant them. Take social media's endless debate vortex. You post a thoughtful take on productivity, only to have a stranger twist your words into something you never meant. The old you might spend hours crafting the perfect clapback, sweating over punctuation. The Stoic version, you close the tab, not out of avoidance, but because you've run the cost-benefit analysis. Even if you win, you've lost time, energy, and peace. A tech CEO I coached tracked his team's hours spent on internal message boards defending minor disagreements. The total, 72 hours a month, equivalent to dumping 9 full workdays into a black hole of semantic sparring. That's the hidden tax of unnecessary argument. Here's the twist: silence isn't passive. It's a deliberate choice to invest your energy where it counts. Marcus Aurelius faced constant criticism from senators hungry to provoke him. His journal reveals his strategy. The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy. When gossip reached his ears, he'd redirect funds to a public works project or draft legislation benefiting the poor. His silence wasn't weakness, it was a redirection of force. Your modern equivalent, that colleague who needles you in meetings, might crave the drama of your reaction. Deny them the spectacle, and suddenly their words hang limp in the air, unanswered and unamplified. Today's challenge is deceptively simple. Let one comment pass unresponded. The snarky remark in the group chat, the baiting tweet, the backhanded compliment. Treat it like a leaf floating past on a river. Notice the urge to correct, to justify, to have the last word. Then notice something else. The sky doesn't fall. Your worth isn't auctioned in the marketplace of others' opinions. As Epictetus put it, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish. The iron mind knows not every battle is worth your breath. Sometimes victory looks like walking away, hands in pockets, whistling. The true power of Stoicism isn't found in grand gestures or dramatic transformations. It's in the quiet accumulation of small, daily choices. That morning pause before reacting, the deliberate breath when frustration flares, the gratitude scribbled in a notebook before bed. These are the threads that weave an unshakable mind, stitch by stitch. Think of it like forging steel. Each time you choose discipline over impulse, patience over irritation, presence over distraction, you're not just reacting to life, you're tempering your resilience. And just as a blacksmith's hammer shapes metal through repetition, your consistent practice shapes your character. The irony, the battles that feel insignificant, holding your tongue in traffic, walking away from gossip, embracing discomfort, are the very ones that prepare you for life's true crucibles. Marcus Aurelius never set out to become a philosopher king. He became one by showing up day after day to the work of mastering his mind. His journals weren't filled with earth-shattering revelations, but with reminders. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. That's the Stoic secret. Greatness isn't a destination. It's the sum of ordinary moments handled with extraordinary intention. The parent who stays patient during a toddler's tantrum. They're building the same mental muscle as a general holding steady under siege. The student who studies despite fatigue, they're training for resilience as surely as an athlete preparing for the Olympics. Your challenge now is simple but profound. Pick one practice from these 28, not the flashiest, but the one that whispers to your current struggles. Maybe it's the 3-second pause before reacting, or the nightly journaling, or the cold shower that teaches discomfort isn't fatal. Commit to it for 30 days, not perfectly, but persistently. Track the subtle shifts, how your shoulders loosen when you stop complaining, how clarity emerges when you focus on what's controllable, how setbacks start to feel less like threats and more like training. Marcus left us a final gift in his last written words. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That power isn't reserved for emperors or saints. It's in your hands every time you choose perspective over panic, action over angst, stillness over storm. So tell us in the comments which practice will you forge into your life starting today. Because the iron mind isn't born, it's built, and your next step begins now.